Well, folks, here we again for the weekly forecast. During this past week, of course, we dealt with several precipitation events. The major one was on Monday as we've seen that system push out of the southwestern United States and bring a trough across the center part of the country. And most of the heavy precipitation fell in eastern Nebraska. In fact, the eastern one quarter of the state seen precipitation totals varying on average between 4/10 of an inch and 75/100ths of an inch, with a few isolated spots that approached the 1-inch mark. But as you headed towards central Nebraska, precipitation totals dropped off rather dramatically, and we were only looking at anywhere from trace amounts to less than 1/10 of an inch from central Nebraska westward. And then the preceding fronts that moved through on a daily basis really didn't give us a lot of significant moisture outside of the Thursday event, which did drop some light precipitation, less than 1/4 inch in most places from north central through southeast Nebraska. We had another wave move through last night, but it didn't really produce much, and we are expecting a fairly nice forecast here for the next few days before we start to turn our attention to the potential for precipitation as we move through the middle into the end of next week. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see what we can expect. Our first system that's coming down the pipeline is now over the Dakotas, expected to rapidly shoot toward the southern Great Lakes region, and that'll drag a cold front across the northern plains and may impact portions of northeast Nebraska with some light precipitation during the overnight hours, and there might even be a few snowflakes thrown in with that. Less of a chance across to east central and southeast Nebraska, and as you're in western Nebraska, it doesn't look like any precipitation out of this system. And so by the time we get to tomorrow, that system will pass the Great Lakes, and now we'll start to see ridging trying to build into our region. So we're going to see a fairly nice end of the weekend in terms of temperatures. We'll be looking consistently to be into the 70-degree range, and that will expand toward eastern Nebraska, particularly as we get into Monday and Tuesday. As that ridge starts to push eastward, we'll see temperatures in the mid-70s out west to possibly even upper 70s in a few isolated locations, low 70s across eastern Nebraska. As we get into Tuesday, we'll hold those conditions again for the temperatures. That ridge, the center of the ridge is right over top of us. We have a trough that's going to be moving across the northern plains that will kind of push this ridge down slightly as we go into the midweek period. And here we are on Wednesday as that trough tries to push down. There is some signs of the model trying to generate some precipitation scattered across northern Nebraska, but right now it doesn't look like a real good moisture source. More importantly, we start to see the trough developing on Thursday that looks to be more significant, and we'll start to see energy coming into western Nebraska Thursday evening. And by the time we get into Friday, we'll see that that system has wound itself up over eastern Kansas, and therefore we might see some significant precipitation across eastern Nebraska and possibly even accumulating snowfall across western Nebraska. Keep an eye on the weather that may change as we go forward in time. In terms of the temperature forecast, we are looking at real nice conditions this weekend, and then a slight cool down as we go into next week, late next week, with the chance of precipitation starting to increase rather dramatically on Friday. In terms of the 8 to 14-day forecast, we keep the cool conditions in place, and in terms of precipitation, a wetter trend for the first time in several weeks.